Hello everyone, Alex here, back again, and as you can see I'm doing something I haven't done before on the channel. This is a live Google Hangouts broadcast on the channel. Here with my good friend Brandon Gregory.
Hello.
I'm sure you all know him by now. He's the only person I've ever collaborated with.
Well, it's because I'm your fave, obviously.
Of course, yeah, the only one I'd want to collaborate with, of course.
Oh, shots fired at the VC.
yeah, of course. Brandon's back again. Long awaited return to Mr. Dylan Records. And today we're going to do a bit of a mid-year review. We're going to count down our top 5 albums of the year so far, of 2015 so far. Obviously, it's almost the end of June now. I think tomorrow is the final day of June, the 30th of June. So yeah, halfway through the year, and we thought we'd just do a little mid-year list, considering we did our top 10 albums of 2014 at the end of last year. 6 months later, we want to kind of revise that and do this year. So yeah, going to get on with that in a second. So just to start, Brandon, what do you think the year's been like so far, music-wise? Do you think it's been a good year or a bad year or average?
It's been good. It's been good. There's been quite a few disappointments this year, which you're always going to get. You get those every year, but I've noticed ever since I've really gone into music, this year in particular has been a year full of kind of a lot of disappointments, the most I've kind of encountered since I've properly started listening to music. So yeah, you'll always get, but maybe that's just because I'm getting into more artists, and by getting into more artists you'll get more disappointment. So, but no, overall it's been good. It's been very good considering it's only in June. We've had a lot of great albums, so yeah, good.
Yeah, there's a lot of albums I'm looking forward to later in the year, well, potential albums coming up, but I think it's been a pretty solid start to the year. I can't compare it to last year. I think last year was a good year as well. But yeah, it's been good so far, and there's been some real highlights. So yeah, gonna get on with our top 5s. I'm gonna let Brandon go first, considering he's the guest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ladies first, man.
Oh no. My number 5 is Jamie XX with In Colour. Really surprising album for me, because I first heard of Jamie XX obviously as part of the XX, but also he did a collaborative album with Just Got Hair On, which I wasn't that big on, to be honest. I found it pretty average, and it never really caught my attention. And I wasn't even really anticipating. I didn't even know he had an album coming out before this released, before he started streaming. And then I heard around that same time he released the single Young Thug and Popcorn, the I Know There's Gonna Be Good Times single, which I love. So
Banger,
summer anthem. So yeah, I was anticipating this. After hearing that track, I was like, oh, this album's gonna really interest me now. So I went into it with an open mind, and I ended up really loving what I heard. I think there's a lot of good variety, but it's still a very kind of British sounding album with the the electronic kind of side of it. Especially, I know he uses quite a lot of vocal samples that are very British. But even necessarily, like, it's got like that kind of UK bass feel to it. It's got like some funky influences, and you can definitely tell he was influenced by like a lot of older UK acts. And it really shows in the music. And like I said, it's very consistent throughout. It's got a very kind of deep house as well sound, very kind of in this album. It's very kind of prevalent, and I really like it though. I think it's very, very consistent. There's no, I think, tracks that really stand out from each other. I think they're all just as good as each other, to be honest. And yeah, I really, really like it. Great album.
Awesome. Yeah. Did you see his Glastonbury set as well?
Yeah, I caught a bit of it. I didn't see all of it. I caught a bit, and he looked really good.
Yeah, that looked awesome. I'd love to see him live, definitely. So yeah, that's your number 5. My number 5 is a bit of a VC favorite. I know a lot of VC members have been posting this on the Facebook page and in their videos. Courtney Barnett with Sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I just sit. First heard of Courtney Barnett, I think it was a couple of years ago, but could have been last year, but I think it was 2013 when she released her double EP, which was a real shock to a lot of people. Nobody had really heard of her before. She was up and coming singer-songwriter, kind of folk rock artist. And she put out this double EP, and it surprised a lot of people, and me included. I really enjoyed that first project of hers, or first full-length project. I think it was really solid, and I was expecting big things from this after hearing this new album. And I have to say, it lived up to my expectations. It had some great variety on here in terms of the track listing, some very high-tempo, rocking type of songs, with her kind of delivering some very kind of rough and ready vocals. She's got this real kind of growl to her voice. She can do the kind of down-tempo, slow ballad type moments, but she can also, you know, really add a really intense kind of flavor to her voice as well. And I think she kind of balances those two different personas very well on this album. There's some very up-tempo tracks with a lot of energy, and then you've got some kind of down-tempo ballads like Depreston, I think was one of my favorite songs on there. So overall, yeah, I can't fault this project. There are a few weak tracks, a few tracks that didn't feel like they kind of fit on the album. They're a bit lackluster, but overall, massive props to Courtney Barnett. I think, along with Laura Marling, who's another one of my favorite current female singer-songwriters, I think both of them are doing a great job of kind of, bringing singer-songwriter music to this decade. So yeah, big props to Courtney Barnett for Sometimes I Sit and Think, and Sometimes I Just Sit. That's my number 5.
I thought you mentioned those two because they're so different from each other. They're really, really different artists.
I wouldn't say so.
I'd say they're quite different.
I would definitely say Laura Marling used to be a lot different, but she's like, her last album was quite rocky as well. When I went to see her live, she was quite not similar, but you know, there are similarities there, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, my number 4 is Jeff Rosenstock with We Cool. A really, really good blend of pop punk and like post-hardcore and indie rock. It's just, I never heard of Jeff Rosenstock for this, and it's not to sound ignorant, because obviously I know now that he's been in the music industry for quite a long time, and he's had various bands, various side projects. He's been very, very busy. Music, he's a very hard worker. But this album really intrigued me because the instrumental side of it I love. I think it's really kind of, it's really different, and it's really varied in terms of the instrumentation. But then you look at his like lyrics, and you look at, you know, what he's saying, and it's almost like, I think Anthony Fantano put it right, the Neil drop. He said it's almost like a midlife crisis album for somebody that's in their 30s, and there's a lot of kind of like reflection, and there's a lot of looking back at old memories, and just seeing how contrasting the instrumentation can be to the vocals and to the lyrics. To me, is what makes it so interesting. And usually I'm not a favourite of that. Usually I like kind of when artists set a mood and they all kind of blend together. But on this one, for some reason, the contrast just really worked between, like I said, the instrumentation and the vocals. So, and like, I love his vocals. Like I said, he's just so raw, and he's so like, he doesn't hold anything back. Like, he's not afraid to, you know, if you want pitch perfect vocals, don't listen to Jeff Rosenstock, because you're not going to get them. But what you will get is a lot of attitude. You'll get a lot of emotion, you'll get a lot of everything. Like I said, he's so varied within his lyrics and within his voice that I really think that even if you don't like this album, then you'll appreciate what he's trying to do and what he is, and at least his honesty that he's willing to kind of portray on this album. So yeah, I love it. I think it's a really great album.
You forgot to mention you know, the certain person that introduced you to this album.
Oh, Anthony.
No, it was me, man.
You didn't introduce me to this.
I'm sure. No, I did, man. I pointed it out to you. I was like, listen.
Look at Alex always trying to take credit.
I did, man. I guarantee it. Go back to our text.
Oh, we'll see.
So yeah, that's a good choice. I really enjoyed that album as well. My number 4, Brandon's already mentioned this, is number 5. This is Jamie XX with In Color. And again, like Brandon, I didn't really have any expectations going into this, because I wasn't a fan either of is it When You Hear? That is collaboration with Gil Scott-Heron.
I can't remember the name.
I think it was When You Hear, which came out a few years ago. And there was some good moments on there, but I didn't think anything. There was nothing on there that blew me away. So I went in with no expectations at all, and yeah, I came out thoroughly satisfied. I think he put together a very cohesive, solid album that had some really great moments. Some of my favorite moments of the year. Brandon's already mentioned the Young Thug track. It's going to be Good Times, which feels like a bit of a change of pace on the album. There are definitely some up-tempo moments and some, as Brandon said, some vocal samples, some female vocal samples, which really fit with the vibe of the album. But I think the Young Thug track, you needed that kind of one, I don't want to say hit, but that one song on there that really kind of is catchy and accessible and easily recognizable. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks on there. Me and Brandon were saying, like, I don't think anyone but Young Thug would have fit on this track. Even though I'm by no means a fan of Young Thug. I thought his last album, I listened to it very recently and I didn't like it at all. But he really brought his own vibe to this, and it worked really well. But the whole album is really solid. It didn't feel like it dragged at all. It wasn't too long. And yeah, it's got this very British feel to it, which I haven't been a huge fan of in the past on other albums, but I think it works on here to its advantage with the vocal samples, and it feels kind of almost Burial-like. Some of the samples felt quite Burial-like to me. Not the album, just the samples. But yeah, massive credit to Jamie XX. I really enjoyed this album. So that's my number 4.
My number 3 is Toro y Moi with What For. Man, I do not understand the hate for Toro y Moi, especially his past 2 albums. Like, I thought his last album was underrated, but this album is just getting a lot of negative reviews and a lot of negative feedback, and I just don't understand him. Like, to me, he puts out some of the best and catchiest pop music out there, and I really don't think he gets enough credit for it, and especially on this album, because on his last album, Anything in Return, he stuck to his electronic side and ventured off in a couple of tracks. But on this one, he's gone definitely more to like a psychedelic pop side. And no, I just can just imagine this album, just sun is out, and you just, in your car, roll the windows down and just play this album, because it's perfect summer music to me. I was listening to it, and like I said, it's really cohesive without sounding the same. There's no, apart from Buffalo, which I think is a fantastic song, pop song. I think it's an amazing pop song. But apart from that, there's no real other standout tracks, because they're all just as good as each other, and they all fit within the atmosphere and the sound of the album. And I gotta give him massive props. Like, I love his vocal style, and I love, like I said, the psychedelic instrumentation, because it doesn't go too psychedelic. It still keeps his pop influences, and it still stays very melodic and very catchy. And that's what I love from Toro y Moi. And he delivered, again, what I love about him. So I can't fault it, and I think it's a really great album.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I haven't listened to the album yet, but I've heard good things from you. I know it's got mixed reviews, but yeah, I'll definitely I'll give it a listen. Okay, on to my number 3. This should come as no surprise. Been a massive fan of this trio for a long time, not since they started, but for a good couple of years. Death Grips with The Powers That Be. Obviously, this isn't just exclusive to this year. The first part of this album came out in 2014, and I don't know if I've talked about it before, but that first part was very felt like quite a bit of a detour for Death Grips. It felt a bit more surreal and psychedelic. It mixed in these Bjork samples along with obviously the classic kind of Death Grips heaviness, and MC Ride's obviously pummeling vocals. And I thought the first part was interesting, really, really solid first half of the album. And then we come to the second half, Jenny Death, which came out a couple of months ago, I think it was. But this was definitely, without doubt, one of the most highly anticipated and hyped underground releases of all time. This was just Death Grips are trolling their fans, putting out kind of like these ambiguous, subtle messages everywhere. They released an instrumental album which spelled out Jenny Death When, which was hilarious, and it was this build up, and it was set to be one of the biggest albums of the year. And I think when it finally came out, it didn't disappoint one bit. The second half felt a lot heavier, a lot more like the kind of trademark Death Grips that you might have heard on some of their earlier stuff, but with some really new and creative ideas on there as well. Some tracks that definitely took me by surprise. And overall, looking at this album as a whole, I don't quite know how it works as a double album. I don't see how these two parts go together. Maybe it's kind of like two ends of the spectrum because they're quite different. But I think as a whole, this album it works so well, and it's a kind of fitting conclusion to the Death Grips project. If it is the conclusion, because we don't know, they might get back together anytime. They're so unpredictable. They could put out an album tomorrow or next year or 10 years down the line, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit. So yeah, this was a very impressive project, and I had to put them in my top 5. So Death Grips, how's it been?
Yay for Death Grips. My number 2 is from a rapper that just continues to impress me and continues to show to me why he's one of the best rappers out right now, and that's Earl Stretcher with I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. This album kind of came out of nowhere. It was like a very, it was released that just kind of came without any sort of notice, bit of a surprise album from Earl. But the following interviews then really, because when I first listened to it, I wasn't big on it. I really wasn't fussed on it the first couple of times. But then as I started to listen to him more, then watching the interviews he was doing with various radios and stuff like that, where he was talking about the album and the experiences he was going through, it kind of made sense to me, and I started to really warm towards the album a lot more, and I felt like I understood the album a lot more. And once I began to understand the album, it really just grew and grew and grew in terms of quality, and now I seriously think it's a fantastic album. It's all self-produced by Earl, which I gotta give him massive props to, because the production really fits his lyrical messages of what he's trying to say.
Is it his production debut? Is it the first album he's produced?
Yeah, well, the first album. He's done production work before on different projects, but like on his own stuff, yeah. And I gotta give him, lyrically, it's Earl, man. Like, Earl is gonna deliver on the lyrics all the time. He's got his crazy metaphors and these just complex lyrics. But what I love about Earl, again, is just he's becoming a lot more kind of in touch with his emotions, and he's really giving you honest kind of thoughts and feelings, and that's what I think is really good. And it doesn't come off in a really sappy, tear-stained teenage diary shit either. It comes across as like a real, genuine emotion, and it comes across as like really dark. And like I said, sometimes it's not the stuff you want to hear, but it's the truth, and like that's what I really credit Earl for. And I think this album's amazing. I really do. So big props to Earl. He's 3 for 3 in my eyes now. I loved his last 2 projects as well. So big up to Earl for that one.
He definitely trumped Tyler this year, I think, with Tyler's album being lackluster. Yeah, awesome, man. I'll definitely put out a good project. My number 2, though, is another rapper, which I was actually introduced to quite late. This guy kind of slipped under the radar for me. Lupe Fiasco with his album Tetsuo and Youth, should I say. And this album was, as I say, a bit of a surprise for me because I hadn't heard any of Lupe before this. But I might have listened to his first 2 albums before going into this. But Lupe is, I think it's fair to say, he's a bit of a hip hop legend now. He's been making music for best part of a decade. I think his first album came out in 2006. So he's been going a while, and he's put out 2 albums which people consider to be classic status, I guess, with Food and Liquor and The Cool. but yeah, I don't think I'd heard those before listening to this. I've listened to them many times since then. But Lupe, he kind of prides himself on being an intelligent, witty lyricist. He's very complex at times in his lyrics, but I don't think it's ever inaccessible, or it doesn't get to the point where you don't understand what he's talking about. He always kind of just brings creative ideas to his lyricism and his wordplay. And he touches on some really important topics as well. He's a very topical rapper. But this album here, I think, is his best so far. I seriously think this is better than his first two albums. He, in my opinion, switched it up. I mean, I haven't heard the previous two albums before this, which I heard were a bit of a poor effort for Lupe, Lasers and Food and Liquor 2. So this was definitely a comeback for many people, and it's just the production on here is great. I think he mixed in some kind of creative and experimental production with some more accessible and catchy production. But I feel like most of the tracks have production that fits the lyrics and fits the flow that he has on the songs. And there are some long tracks on here, which I know is one of the reasons Brandon doesn't like it as much as me. He probably would have made his top 5 if it wasn't so long. But I don't think that the length really detracts that much from the enjoyment of this for me. There are a couple of tracks that dragged a little bit. But for instance, the opening track, Mural, is probably top 5 song of the year for me. It's 9 minutes. And it's quite a repetitive beat, but I think Lupe's lyricism and his, some of the topics that he touches on in that song keep it interesting, keep it engaging for me. And he goes on to give me a track listing that's definitely worthy of my top 5. Great tracks like Madonna, Deliver, Chopper, Prisoners 1 and 2.
Body of Work is my favorite track.
Body of Work's a great song.
Love
Dots and
Body of
Lines. Pretty much every track on here has a couple of weak ones, a couple of substandard ones, but for the most part, I think Lupe nailed this. So Tetsuo and Youth is my number 2.
Yeah, I really like that album. Really nice to see Lupe back on form. Definitely. After a couple of total letdowns. Anyway, my number 1 is from a band that, again, I gotta give props to Mr. Fantano, Mr. Needle Drop. Himself, because without his video and his review, I would never probably would have viewed this band. And his Algiers with their self-titled album. And I remember watching, or just clicking on the review. I tend to watch most of his reviews, and I remember seeing the description before I even watched the review and seeing the kind of genres he put it under. So he put it under like post-punk, industrial, and gospel. And I was like, oh, okay. So before I saw anything, before I saw any rating or any review, I was like, I gotta listen to this right now, because that's like the strangest combination I've heard in quite a while. And I listened to it, and from first listen to how I've lost count of how many times I've listened to it now, it's just blown me away, because the fact that they've managed to incorporate all these different sounds and the very kind of, at times, very abrasive production and the very kind of tension building production mixed with such soulful vocals makes it such a weird blend. And like I said previously, about contrasting, kind of like with the Jeff Rosenstock album, about contrasting styles. I usually like artists that kind of set up atmospheres and they set up moods and they kind of stick within that, and that's what creates cohesion. But then you get albums like this that just make it all work. Somehow they make it all work, and I can't quite explain, but that's the magic of music, is you don't even have to explain it. It just works, and it comes together. It just builds. Like I said, I've compared it before to like a horror film, like that continuously kind of builds on tension and builds on tension and builds on tension. It keeps building, and it just gives you so much. There's so many layers. It's so dense. It's like, you can't just give this one listen and be like, oh, I know whether I like it. Like, you have to give this, in my opinion, a good 4, 5, 6 listens to really just get everything that's in on this album. Because like I said, there's so much going on. There's so much vocal harmonies. There's choirs. It sounds like there's choirs on there at times. And it's like, so much going on that it's a lot to take in, but once you can take it in, in my opinion, it becomes like a truly amazing piece of art.
Yeah, I think that's the mistake that I made. When you told me to listen to it, I put it on as background music, and it doesn't work as background music.
Headphone, you really got to concentrate with this kind of album. Do you know what I mean? And I really, really think this album is amazing. So big ups to Algiers. I'm really excited to see where they go from here, but I'm just happy sitting with this album right now because I've listened to it a lot of times and I'm still not done. So yeah, big props to them for an amazing album.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I didn't think they would make your number one. I knew you liked the album, but I didn't think it would be a number one. So it's awesome to hear. I definitely need to check that out soon. But yeah, on to my number one now. This will come as no surprise to either Brandon or probably anyone that knows my taste at the moment. But this is by far my favorite rapper of this generation. I think this guy is just setting the bar very, very high at the moment. And of course, I'm talking about Mr. Kendrick Lamar with his masterpiece, in my opinion, his album To Pimp a Butterfly. This came out a couple of months ago, and definitely my most anticipated album of the year. I can't see anything kind of topping this in terms of anticipation or quality for me. I seriously can't see anything getting above this by the end of the year. And yeah, after Good Kid, Mad City came out in 2012, you know, I was immediately, after listening to that album and absorbing it and you know, listening to it on repeat for months and months, I was just thinking about what can Kendrick do next? What can he go on to do after this? Because obviously he's talked about basically his whole life up until that point was kind of leading to Good Kid, Mad City. And I was really interested to see where he would take his music next. And I think with this album, you know, Kendrick always delivers on concept, and what he has done so far, and his three albums have all been, you know, flawless concept-wise. And this album's no exception. He ties the whole album together with a really interesting kind of poem that he reveals line after line as the songs go on. And I think the concept's amazing, but I think you can't, it definitely doesn't rely on the concept whatsoever. I think these are great standalone tracks. Maybe in a way that Good Kid, Mad City didn't have that. I mean, some of the tracks on Good Kid, Mad City probably wouldn't have worked without the concept. But this album, you know, every song just blew me away. And there's moments of frustration on here. There's some, you know, some very serious political and social issues addressed by Kendrick, talking about Black power and justice, justice for the Black community, and obviously racial issues as well in America. So you're always going to get that kind of political element when you listen to Kendrick. And again, I just added so much to these songs, added another dimension to them. And I know Brandon doesn't think he's a great lyricist, and I would probably have to agree with that. I mean, I think he's a very, very good lyricist, but I don't think he's up there kind of top 5 in the game. But I do think Kendrick is a masterful songwriter in the way that he puts songs together. You know, he gets the best producers, or the producers that he thinks fits the songs that he's putting together, gets great features. He doesn't just put features on there for the sake of it. He gets features that really work on each of the songs. And it all comes together with just this complete package. And I think To Pimp a Butterfly is definitely that for me. I think this is better than Good Kid, Mad City. And God knows where he's going to go from here, because this is just so good to me. And highlight track, I can't really give you highlight tracks because I like pretty much every song on here. The opening track, Wesley's Theory, is amazing. King Kunta, Institutionalized, Mortal Man, Hood Politics, Mama. Seriously, every song on here is great. So it had to be my number one, and probably by quite some distance as well. So yeah, that's my list.
Yay! Top 5 albums, music.
Top 5. We've done it, man. I know we've rambled on here for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been cool discussing our favorite albums of the year so far. We'll obviously, I think we'll get together again at the end of the year for top 10 of 2020.
Hopefully in person for that time.
Yeah, like last year. yeah, we'll get together for that one. So yeah, but in the meantime, I think we'll try and do some more of these hangouts. I haven't really got many ideas for my channel in terms of other videos, so it'd be cool to do some more discussions with Brandon on various topics, music related topics. So stay tuned for that, and go and check out Brandon's channel. He's a bit inactive at the moment, I have to say, but he'll be back soon with some vinyl updates and stuff. So go and subscribe to Brandon's channel. I'll put it in the description. And that's pretty much it, I think, man. Anything you want to say?
Thank you for having me on. Leave some of your top fives if you're watching us. Leave some of your top fives in the comments. We love talking about music. I love seeing different people's lists and opinions and stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll see you soon on Alex's channel again, hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be good. Cool. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.